Good evening. Tonight we will be delving deeply into Charles Dickens' novel A Tale of Two Cities and the social commentary of the novel as it pertains to the time. In addition, we will be featuring an exclusive interview with Dickens to find out what England was really like during the time. We will be concluding with a roundtable discussion, including the three estates of France, so to ensure we know every side of the oppression. And so it is. A Tale of Two Cities. Good evening, Charles. How are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well, thank you very much. So tell me, Charles, A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. It's quite the powerful contradiction. Do tell us something about that.
Well, what I really wanted to portray to my audience was that France was in a complete uprising. There was a rebellion sweeping throughout the country, and people were being beheaded by the thousands. In fact, a character that I do greatly idolize, Charles Darnay, was originally from France and had revoked his French heritage to seek refuge in England.
That's very interesting. That being said, you yourself being from England, of course, would you necessarily say that through the novel you portrayed a bias towards England? Or would you say you tried to keep things a little bit evened out?
I know it may appear that I was showing bias towards England, but that's just how the time period was. France was completely distraught in its whole social system, and there was uprising and rebellion, as I previously said. However, England, on the other hand, was just acting as a sanctuary for the majority of people. People were seeking refuge, as I said, Charles Darnay, and people were just feeling much more safe in England. So it's just historically found that England was better off, and France was not so great.
That being said, would you necessarily say that France?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my homegirl, the Queen. Hey, yo, what up, Elizabeth? Nah, girl, I can't talk right now. I'm in an interview. Alright, I'll meet up with you later. Alright, peace.
Anyways, continuing from where we were, the imbalance of power. Would you say that that was very portrayed easily in your novel A Tale of Two Cities? Because I understand that, as you had said earlier, your character Charles Darnay had once said, "I have said that for my prospering there, I'm sensible. I may be indebted to you, sir. For the rest, it is my refuge, and that refuge being England, because he is not even almost, he is taking away his title as the Evermond. So tell us, is he trying to part ways with Monsignor?"
Well, he's not necessarily parting ways with France or his uncle. He's mainly parting ways with the corruption that was in the second estate, rather. He didn't like how they were treating the third estate, and he was actually one of the people that agreed with the rebellion. He felt that the third estate was not given equal rights, and he just didn't like how they were pushed around by the second and first estates.
And it's very interesting you say that. Clarify for the audience, what were the three estates?
Well, the first estate was made up of the clergy. It was people who went to church and who were part of the Church of France. The second estate was made up of nobility. Those were people who, excluding the king and queen, of course, had a royal connection. They had power over the third estate. They were mainly the ones causing distress for the third estate. They taxed them and collect taxes and just felt they were more powerful. The third estate was made up of peasants. It was mainly made up of everybody else. It was made up of people such as peasants and people such as the bourgeoisie. They had no power, they had no rights, and they were just treated like complete crap.
Interesting. I'd like to bring up another quote that you had put earlier. In your novel you state, "One tall joker so besmirched, his head more out of a long squalid bag of nightcap than in it, scrawled upon a way with his finger dipped in muddy wine." And he wrote, "Blood." Tell us, what was the significance of that? And off of that, please explain to the audience how that, in addition to both your portrayal within the novel, how it all ties together back into the French Revolution.
Well, that's just showing the situation that the third estate was in. They were in such bad shape that when the wine casket spilled on the floor, people scurried towards it, and people actually took it up and wrote blood as a symbol for the desire for bloodshed.
Would you necessarily say that that yearning for the bloodshed, was that necessarily a significant point in your novel in which the characters are signifying that they want the revolution?
Well, definitely the third estate wants the revolution. Early in the novel, we see that Madame Defarge is knitting, and it's later on that we find out that she's actually knitting a web of like murders that she wished to happen. So it's very obvious that the Third Estate wants the revolution to happen, even at this point, where they write blood.
It's interesting because Madame Defarge, because she's part of the Third Estate, as you had stated earlier. However, she almost signifies being of a higher power to be leading all of the peasants of the time period. Excuse me for my lack of terminology. So, would you necessarily say that she was the leader? And tell us the significance, because I do understand that she had been killed later. She was killed.
I would not say that she was necessarily a leader, however, she did play a major role in the revolution. She helped to incite people into actually acting. Otherwise, people would just have simply sat around and accepted and been angry and sad. But she didn't necessarily start the revolution on her own.
Mm-hmm. Between Defarge, between Darnay, between all these characters, how are we wrapping up? How are we using this as insight, almost, for the French Revolution, the time period itself?
Well, each character represents a certain type of person back then. There were people such as Madame Defarge who were just not necessarily insightful, inciting of the revolution. They wanted people to die, they wanted to rise up. There were other people such as Charles Darnay, who was of the Second Estate and who was pure at heart and who wanted things to change. However, he didn't really want bloodshed. There were people such as Dr. Manet, who was actually of the Third Estate in France, and he didn't want bloodshed. He was more peaceful about it. He wanted things to just change calmly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was a very triumphant outcome for the Third Estate and for France as a whole, because even though the monarchs were beheaded, it was a whole new era for the French people. They were able to revolutionize their country and make it a more modernized, equal society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Charles, I want to thank you very much for being featured tonight. I want you guys to stay tuned because we will be having a roundtable discussion with our three estates of France to see. We've gotten the side of England, and now we will be getting the side of France. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's segment. Tonight we'll be featuring a roundtable discussion of the three, or rather the two, estates. You see, the First Estate was not able to be here with us tonight, for he had a more important meeting with Jesus. Please welcome a member of the Third Estate, Emily. How are you tonight?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm well. And now, please welcome a member of the Second Estate, Monsignor Evermond. How are you? Okay.
I'm sorry. They're all like this. Do you expect us to do something?
Why am I here? I have more important things to do.
Do you have more important things to be doing? You don't have a family to take care of.
Okay. I see we've already started. I'm glad you were both able to be here today. Mainly Emily, since you threw an umbrella at me.
Mainly me. I have more important things to be doing rather than sitting with you peasants.
Important, yeah. I bet.
So, I've gathered you two here to assess the emotions and feelings on both sides of the matter of equality.
Equality? Is that even a word in this nation?
I'll have you know it's more than equal in this nation.
Oh, how do you figure?
95% of our nation labors, and we are very powerful as a whole because of the 95%, but I'll also have you know...
The 95% that does the grunt work of our nation, and then it gets zero representation and gets taxed the hardest, even though we barely make means to get by.
That's an interesting point.
No, it's not interesting enough because that 95% doesn't do enough, and perhaps we should be doing more.
More needs to be done, then maybe the whole nation should work for themselves.
I'll have you know that 5% of the nation, the wealthy and powerful, I should add, are the reason this nation is still together.
You've
That
more
other
than gotten across the
95%.
message that you guys are powerful. You're tyrants.
Could you provide examples of that?
Last week, him, personally, ran over a small child in my village.
He was in my way. I had no intention of doing such.
And you had no sorrow to the family once they gathered and saw their child dead.
I think it.
Is this true?
Yes, it's true. But I think my compensation, my gold coin, my own hard-earned money.
Hard-earned. What a nice thought you had to add in there, because that was so hard-earned by you sitting and doing nothing all day.
Blech.
Let you.
What are you hoping will change in France in the upcoming years?
That will be taxed less and will have more representation in the
Taxed
government.
more.
Taxed less.
How much are you taxed, Monseigneur?
Enough.
You provide a percentage,
A
perhaps?
figure, maybe?
0% annually.
And what makes you greater than everyone else?
The fact that up until this very moment, I had to work to get to 0%, and you're not working hard enough!
I'm not working hard enough, I'm sure! You were born into royalty and that's 0%.
I was born into hard labor,
You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
and yours was made of bronze.
I see the conflicting emotions. Emily, on one hand, of the Third Estate, wants things to change, wants equality to take over in the French social system. Monseigneur over here wants everything to stay the same and feels it is as ideal as it will ever be.
You'll continue eating the scraps of all my food.
Change is coming whether you want it or not.
Change will
That's
never
an interesting thought. What do you plan on doing to help that to
Do
progress?
tell me what you do plan on doing
The
if you have such large
95%
words.
is going to work together and make a change happen, whether your little 5% wants it or not.
You will work together and continue working, and you will slave for the 5% who need you, peasants, to be doing all the work that I will not be sweating over.
Maybe you should sweat a little, fatty.
Where do we go from here?
Excuse me, folks. I must take a tinkle. Discuss amongst yourselves.
I don't want
No,
to.
please don't leave me. Oh my.
I don't want to discuss anything with you. I'm disgusted with you.
You will not use that kind of foul language in my presence.
Oh, in your presence? What about your nephew? Nobody likes you. Your
You do
nephew's
not
on
speak
our
of my
side
nephew. I am just as disgusted with him as I am with you and your people. And you will ruin the day that you ever
now.
speak to me like that.
Did you really just peasants?
Alright, now that we're done with that, join us next week as we discuss Lindsay Lohan's career's downfall. Damn, Africa. What happened?
First up, we have our Third Estate with Emily and Noah.